Meeting to order. Start with Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Cody, roll call, please.
Supervisor Gunning.
Here.
Treasurer Rice.
Here.
Trustee Hauk.
Here.
Trustee Micus.
Here.
Trustee Worley.
Here.
Clerk Cody here. Trustee Lannon is excused.
All right. All right, at this point in time, we'll need to have an approval of the agenda.
I'd make a motion that we move item D to consider adoption of the zoning map amendment ordinance 2019-02, rezone a portion of R-3A multiple family residential district to B-5 highway district, business district located at South Lincoln Road. So I'm making a motion that we move D up to A and move each of the others down just one notch in terms of their letters.
Support.
Okay, so that would move item D to A, A to B.
And everything would just go down one letter.
Yep. All right. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of that change of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item D, now item A. And that moves us to item 6, which is a public hearing, and this is going to be a zoning map amendment ordinance 2019-02 to rezone a portion of R3A multiple family residential to B5 highway business district, and this is located at South Lincoln Road. At this time, if anyone would like to speak in the public hearing, they're welcome to come up.
Good evening, Mark McKellar on behalf of the applicant. Good to see the board here again. It's been a little while. I don't know if there's any other opposition here or support, so it's your pleasure. I guess I'm more or less asking you if you'd want me to just question and answer, or if you'd like me to go through the proposal that's been presented through the Planning Commission, and now you guys had your first review and have gone through at this point. So I would do whatever you'd like.
There's been no change since they appeared before us, is that correct?
That's correct. The application
Okay.
has not changed.
Okay,
So
it's the
I'm not
same that went through the planning commission.
We've gone through all that.
It is, yes.
Okay,
So-
okay. I don't think we need any additional, if everyone's okay and if you're comfortable with that.
That's fine. I would just rely on the record that's already there, and if you
Yeah.
have any questions or discussion, I'd be happy to answer any.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, 1 second here, folks. Let me get the right agenda on my device here. All right. So would anyone like to come forward on the public hearing? Seeing none, we close the public hearing. And we move to public comment. This is going to be restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda only. There will be no question and answer. If anyone would like to come forward, they're welcome to. Seeing no rush to the podium, we will close public comment at this point in time and move to item 8, which is reports and board comments. We do have one resident that has come forward to apply for the alternate position on the ZBA. I believe Liz Presnell, was who I talked to about that a while back. Yep. I know Liz, her husband, worked for me for years when he was in high school. His dad, Plaz Presnell, was with CMU's football program forever, and Ben has stepped into Plaz's shoes. So they are living right over here in Cornerstone. She's very intelligent. I believe, if I remember correctly, she was a political science major in college and is very active politically and in the community, and is very interested in being involved with Union Township. So at this point, I would like to nominate Liz Presnell for the opening in the ZBA as an alternate.
I would move that we confirm the nomination of Liz Presnell as the ZBA alternate.
Second.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Yeah.
2/15/21.
2/15/21, okay. And this would be expiration date of 2/15/2021. Any
You may
further
wanna add that
comment?
to the motion.
Yeah.
Yes, I would add that to my motion.
All right, so this again be for the confirmation of Liz Presnell for our alternate position in the ZBA, and this will be expiring 2/15/2021.
Well, she has a very impressive resume,
Mhm.
and I think fits really well. I could see her, planning commission, but what she's interested in, and any one of those she'd be very qualified for. So, a good candidate here. So again, I'm pleased to see the community reaching out to us and getting involved in helping us out on our board. So, good choice.
Yep, I think she's going to be really solid. Yes, sir.
And I've had the pleasure of meeting Liz and seeing her in action, if you will, being involved in community issues,
Mhm.
and those are the reasons I support Liz.
All right. Any further comment, discussion? All right, so this would be a vote in favor of the affirmation of Liz Presnell to the opening as an alternate in the Zoning Board of Appeals, the expiration date 2/15/2021. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome, Ms. Presnell. All right, that brings us to item B in reports and board comments, which would be Planning Commission and ZBA updates by the Township Planner. If you'd like to come forward, Peter.
So the planning commission met this week, last week. They met twice. They had a special meeting and a regular meeting. The special meeting was with our consultant with McKenna. We went over the first part of what we hope to be 3 parts of reviewing the ordinance. We went through sections 1 through 5. This new ordinance is projected to only be 15 sections instead of the 30-some sections that our current zoning ordinance contains. So we reviewed sections 1 through 5. The Planning Commission gave their input to our consultant. Next, we hope to, in the near future, work on Part 2, which would be sections 6 through 10. The bulk of the review sections 1 through 5 primarily contained definitions, quite lengthy. The other sections through 1 through 5 weren't as large as the definition section. Spent about 2 hours, got a lot of good feedback reviewing. Talked with our consultant today, and he's working on section 6 as of now. So as I said, our next meeting will be sections 6 through 10, and then the third meeting would be sections 11 through 15. So that's what the special meeting was. We had a regular meeting also scheduled the day before. Tonight, of course, you have before you a rezoning item from a previous Planning Commission meeting. Tonight is the final step, the adoption of that map amendment before you. And so once that is done, it'll be published, notice in the paper of adoption. and then final. Okay, at the regular planning commission meeting, we had 2 site plans, and we also did an election of officers. All officers currently serve 1-year terms. All the current officers, secretary, vice secretary, chair, and vice chair, they were all reappointed for 1-year terms. The next election would be in March of 2020. The 2 site plans, we had one for McDonald's just down the road, 1963 East Remus Road. That's at the corner of Remus and Lincoln Road. The project calls for cosmetic and also interior developments. The main bulk of the project was installing a second drive-through, so it'll have 2 drive-throughs. The plan does currently require sidewalks along Lincoln Road and Remus Road. Lincoln Road, of course, as you'll note, is a priority street, and therefore the Planning Commission was not able to grant any kind of provisional relief from sidewalk construction, and so that's required. Lincoln Road from Broomfield, Lincoln Road from Remus to Pickard is a designated priority street. The applicant did request provisional relief from sidewalk construction along Remus Road, but that was not granted. It was denied. And so at this time, sidewalks are required with the project on both Lincoln and Remus Road. Second site plan is a medical office. It's for Dr. Joseph Yakison. It's a vacant parcel currently on the corner of 2nd Street and Pickard Road, actually right next to the Holiday Inn. And this project was approved. They are planning to put sidewalks on 2nd Street. There's already existing sidewalks on Pickard Road. The applicant did not even request any provisional relief, so that was encouraging. And that project is also, it was approved conditionally. They need a variance for parking area setbacks. Currently, the ordinance states that they have to be no closer than 20 feet to the road right-of-way. The applicant is seeking relief for a 10-foot variance to only be 10 foot from the right-of-way. So that site plan was approved, but on the condition that that variance is granted. The applicant has also applied concurrently for a variance, and we will be deciding that next week at the ZBA meeting. So that's what we've been up to.
So Peter, Ben, if I might ask him, Peter, if the variance for the parking, is that along 2nd Street?
No, it would be on the north side of the parcel, parking spaces facing Pickard.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions for Peter?
Does there seem to be a lot going on? I mean, does it look like it's gonna be a busy construction year?
We've been busy. It looks like in the next couple months we have even more projects coming through. So, but that's typical for the spring. Everybody's ready to get going.
All good?
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
All right. Item D, board member reports. Let us start with Mr. Mikas, and we'll work around the horn.
Ben, I don't have any report to pass along today.
All right. There we go.
I went to a
Mr.
road
Howe?
commission meeting March 14th, the morning meeting. They approved bridge projects. There's 4 bridge projects that they're gonna work on that totaled $174,000. They approved buying a new V-bottom gravel train to replace one that's got holes in it, and then half the gravel probably falls out in the yard before it makes it to the road. So they approved that. And they approved a chip sealing contract for the county, for all the county roads that they're gonna do for $260,000. That's all I have.
All right, any questions for Mr. Halperdell? Yep.
We, since the last meeting, we have since, settled with the county, so, all of that is settled, and now it's just working on getting the, delinquent personal properties and stuff in, so.
How are we doing that? Are we just sending notices out, or is that our?
There's several steps that we have to follow, part of which starts with sending notifications out to them, and that, I've set up a 3-step kind of thing, set of letters kind of thing. So it's
Okay.
a matter of hitting the grindstone and
Do we have
getting
a
it
lot of
done.
delinquent
And
personal property then, or?
there's a few.
Okay.
I don't know what you classify as a lot, but anything over 10 is a lot for me.
Okay. All right.
As you know, I've been in communication with the Saginaw Chippewa tribe. They're currently, accepting 2% requests for the spring cycle. It will be due electronically on March 31st for their review. So I have several things to bring up tonight to discuss, and we need to have the board consider and see if you want to approve these particular projects. And since we have this already on the agenda, for the 2%, we'll just deal with it during the B rather than me going through all the details now.
All right. Lisa,
I have kind of a lengthy one.
that's fine, that's good.
So at the Planning Commission, our special meeting, the Planning Commission Board wanted me to bring a couple things to us, to the Board of Trustees. Okay, I gave you each a packet for the medical marijuana. Okay, so our consultant, McKenna, he recommends that the Planning Commission and the Township Board meet to decide if any of the 5 categories of the marijuana facilities, if we want to pursue any of them, because our, with the new law, they're kind of clashing, so we need to have like kind of a discussion on it, just see what kind of ways to go about that. So, talk to the manager about that a little bit, and then the sidewalk. Okay, so our ordinance now states that our sidewalks need to be 4 foot. The state law states that the mobile home parks need to be 3 foot. So it's kind of clashing. So the Planning Commission would like us to amend the sidewalk ordinance to make maybe a minimum of 5 feet, then appeal to the Mobile Home Commission requesting the mobile home parks in the township will also have to be 5 feet installed instead of 3.
So they're currently 3, and then
Well, they're currently 4.
They're
But the
4.
state law requires the mobile home parks to be 3, so our ordinance needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Okay, so further, we can't retroactively force them to put in 5 foot, so we're talking this, from this point forward.
So if we have
Right.
like the new
Gotcha.
ordinance or
Okay.
updated one, then we can take it to the mobile home association
Gotcha,
or committee.
okay.
And is the planning commission considering this as they're doing their?
Yeah, it was one of the things that came to us for, to update that
Okay.
we need to do.
Gotcha.
So we should probably time any kind of changes with our ordinance with, because that's gonna have to eventually come to us for approval
Yeah.
on that, and public hearing and all that. So what is their time frame?
They didn't really have one. They just
Because I mean,
wanted to ask
they're
the
gonna
board.
finish up these new ordinances, correct? And
Yeah.
so we would probably wanna step on it if we can get this done. It seems pretty simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. City meeting. Hold on here. Got a bunch of papers.
Lisa, before you go
Oh,
on to that,
okay.
Ben, may I ask her a question?
Yes, sir.
reference to the McKenna letter regarding the medical marijuana facility regulations. So do you see recommendations of action coming from the planning commission?
Well, they wanted to know if you
directing
wanted to
these
have,
changes?
they wanted to know if you, I mean, if you want them to do it, they can, or, and bring you the recommendations, or we can have a joint meeting and kind of discuss it all together. They wanted to know, well, I guess I had that written down too. They wanted to know which way you wanted to go about that. Do you
Wanna know
want them
which
to bring?
chicken- Which
Yeah, do you
would
want?
come first, the chicken or the egg?
It's hard. Do you want the planning commission to either bring it to, or make recommendations to you, or would you like to have a joint meeting per, like, maybe when we have one of our meetings with the marijuana? I talked to Mark about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So if I may, yeah, there was a letter, I was copied on it. What you have in your zoning ordinance currently is some references to medical marijuana, and that is quite dated, even before the 2008, I think, when they changed the medical marijuana law. So that's sitting in there and needs to be removed. And we, the administration, had talked to the consultant about, hey, while you're in here looking at the zoning ordinance, maybe you could put a couple ordinances together, a couple sections of ordinances together, one related to medical marijuana, one to recreation, and just sort of have them on the shelf once the board decided if they wanted to move forward, we'd already have a lot of that work done while they're here. And so that's kind of the impetus for the letter. And you know, there's a couple questions being asked in the letter, and one of the answers that I don't think the consultant is up to speed on is the Board of Trustees has in fact not opted into medical marijuana, and they, you know, that would tell the consultant something if they were aware of that. So it's not like time sensitive from that perspective. And I don't know if the consultant is aware that recently the board voted to opt out of the recreational. And so where the consultant is coming from is, hey, I might have been wanting to work on some medical marijuana ordinances, but I'm not sure what direction to go because of the Board of Trustees and the Planning Commission, you know, but somebody needs to communicate to the consultant that there is sort of a position that may not change the fact that we want, if he's able to, work on these ordinances while they're here. So I think that's what's going on there. And then, just since I'm speaking to it, as it relates to the mobile home and the sidewalks, the clerk talked to me about that, and to whatever extent we would possibly need to update the zoning code to reflect what's being talked about. The sidewalk ordinance is not part of the zoning code. Our sidewalk ordinance is in the general code of ordinances. So, you know, that's where that is, and the consultant's working on the zoning ordinances. Now, it very well may be, and I was going to have a conversation with Peter about this to see what to do about moving forward, that we want to have some sort of alignment if there is a misalignment between regs of the state mobile home commission and the mobile home parks and our zoning codes, but we'd get all that worked out.
So
Thanks.
the planning commission would like to have an answer back by a specific time and place, or do we want to talk about that now?
I mean, we do got a couple, don't we have a couple meetings before then? The planning commission's on the third one, so we got another meeting before then.
All right, so we
can
should
always-
probably maybe think about putting that as a discussion
But once we
point.
get a little more information, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Oh, city
Ben?
meeting.
Oh,
Did you have another question?
I-
Sorry.
I wanted just to comment about the process. It sounds like once the consultant at McKenna regarding our zoning ordinances and the relationship to the medical and recreational marijuana acts. Once he knows about what our position is at this point in time, that might redefine the upcoming process.
I mean, I did inform him about us opting out of the one and knowing that we, you know, didn't opt in on the other. He knows that part of it. It's just like, we have to send something to Laura, like stating we're gonna do probably nothing if that's the case, but still needs to know what he wants us to do. That's,
So Mark, what you're saying is that with the consultants here, it'd behoove us to have, kind of the skeleton of an ordinance in place. If and when the time comes, it would probably be more cost efficient to have these people look at it while they're here, right?
That's what occurred to me very early on when we were even talking about the zoning code update. I have not had a conversation with the consultant, which I will. If it makes sense, the timing that we can get a skeleton or something done under this contract that's on the shelf, it may or may not need additional work. Once the body decides if they want it, where they want it, what zoning codes, all that kind of jazz. You know, it would have to be tweaked, but, and it may be after talking with them that it just, the timing isn't gonna fit, so we proceed with our zoning code. The most important thing right now is getting rid of the old medical marijuana stuff that's in there. That's the most important thing. And then regarding, you know, whether it was intentional or just by default, but in my mind, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, there is a position that this body has taken that maybe even needs to be communicated to the Planning Commission. You know, because they don't decide these kinds of, you know, the Planning Commission doesn't decide if you want marijuana, recreational or otherwise in the township. You all do. And I don't know what the Planning Commission as a body, they may have an opinion on that legitimately. But so you know, the letter was from McKenna to the Planning Commission, and I had not, I think the meeting was last week, and I have not yet had my one-on-one with Peter, and trying to figure out, based on their questions, how to respond and who should respond, because it's to the Planning Commission, and then they asked this to be brought to the board, so it got kind of a little bit convoluted or confusing. But the Planning Commission did ask for that letter to be brought forward, so certainly that's why it's here, because they asked for it to be brought forward. What we do with it next, you know, we need to digest it a little bit.
So you might be back at our next meeting with some
more information on it.
reaction to the digestion.
Yeah, and if it, you know, if it's something that shouldn't wait till then, I'll just send you an email about what I think is going on and what we should be doing.
Thank you.
It'd be nice to know, along with that too, what exactly Mount Pleasant has decided to allow within their district, whether they're all 5 or just 3, or, you know. I guess I'm not real sure exactly where they're at as far as, you know, are they allowing all 5 of these components in, or just a part of them? Do they have room for 1, 3, and 5?
I think that, if I'm not mistaken, the 3 licenses that were available in the lottery had to do with
Visiting centers.
Provisioning, I believe.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything on like
But I haven't heard
the
anything
growers and the
yeah.
processors, and
Yeah.
and to be frank with you, that's where you have
Right.
the bigger complexes
Correct.
and the higher pay scale, and yeah. So that'd be interesting to kind of know that when we're at the point where we're discussing.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Any other
My city
report?
meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. You still have more to go. You did say it was long. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
It was a lot. And then, okay, so the city meeting, they approved an agreement with the Friends of the Dog Park for the Hannah Bark Park.
Bark Park.
Hannah Bark Park. They, to install lighting, they're gonna, or have a, yeah,
Pedestrian lighting.
they're gonna, got me all on that. Raise funds for installing the lighting at the Hannah Bark Park. That is hard to say. Okay, what else they do? Lions come. Oh, they turned in their 2% to the tribal. That's about it. I just wanted to mention the Hannah Bark Park for the lighting
The
because
2%
we're
that
kind of in
city
with that.
it was like something about sidewalk cleanup or something, wasn't it?
There's quite a few of them.
Was there?
Yeah, there's that one was the sidewalk snow removal equipment. But yeah, there's like 10, 15 things on the list. I got the list if you guys wanted to see it
Yeah, be interesting.
later.
All right. Done?
I think
You
so.
you have more meetings you went to, or is that it?
I think so.
Okay, all right. Just checking. All right, so we'll move out of item 8 into item 9, and this is gonna be the consent agenda. So we'll need a motion on that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as is.
Support.
I had an opportunity to review the accounts payable, and they all appear in good order, so.
All right.
I have a question on one of the consent, the drain commission, 28,000. Is that for that mission drain out here? Or what drain is that for?
I can give you a more detailed report. The township contributes to several of the drains with this they call it an at-large contribution or payment. We get assessed, and it's to help balance out what each of the individual property owners pay, and then there's a benefit at large that then the township has to pay for, and that was paid as part of the winter tax billing routine.
Mm-hmm.
But I could give you a list of each of the drains and the respective amounts that made up that 28,000, if you wanted.
Have we heard anything else?
Yeah, I was
Are we
just
gonna
gonna ask
do
you the same
anything?
thing. Yeah.
Like over here, is it the mission drain, right?
Yeah,
The one
right,
that's-
that's a separate, that's not what this is
No,
about.
no, I know.
Right.
I just wondered, I know, like my cousin Neil Hauk, that drain kind of starts at his place. He said they were out there last Friday when we were working at Sacred Hearts Fish Fry. He was talking about, I can't remember who his neighbor was that was there, but they were talking about, you know, they're out there doing some surveying and stuff. Maybe they're gonna clean some of this up.
Well, I would anticipate that they would be starting at some point. They had the board of determination. They decided or determined that it needed some work. And then there was some questions on funding. And there's kind of what I've been asking them about and talking about is kind of two separate levels of, I'll call it cleanup. One is limited in scope and dollar amount and what they can do. It's more for the traditional, just kind of clearing out the minor maintenance. And then the special assessment petition that was brought forward for that creek has to do with a larger culverts and a larger kind of rehabilitation. And all I can recall at this point is that the drain commissioner, I mean, he's working the issue, he's working the process, but, you know, how quickly they get their thing done, I can't speak to.
Right. That's what you had reported last time,
Right.
but they haven't really,
But if you see activity out there, it must mean they're moving on something.
yeah, okay.
That's good.
All right. Let's see, we were at the consent agenda, we had the motion to approve, correct, and second, but we still haven't approved it.
Correct.
All right, so at this point in time, we will vote to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. And we move to item 10, new business. We do have a movement from item D to item A, and this is going to be to consider the adoption of zoning map amendment ordinance 2019-02, which is to rezone a portion of R3A multifamily residential district to B5 highway business district, and this is located on South Lincoln Road.
If I may.
Yes, sir.
So this item, there's some paperwork that describes it in more detail, starting on page 33 of your agenda pack. This is a vacant parcel, currently zoned R3A, multifamily residential. There's been a request to rezone a portion of the parcel, and it's the northwest corner of the existing parcel, to rezone it from R3A to B5 to help facilitate the expansion of the existing self-storage business or building operation that exists on the parcel immediately north. The rezoning request was considered at the January Planning Commission meeting. They held a public hearing. Planning Commission considered the application, voted to recommend to this body that this body approve it. They talked about, in terms of supporting that recommendation, that the rezoning was contiguous with similar zone property to the immediate north, and that the request conformed with the future land use map. Utilities are available. And so they took their action, moved it to the Board of Trustees. At your last meeting, you all considered this and asked staff to publish notice for a public hearing to be held tonight, which you had a few moments ago. And if the Board of Trustees does adopt the zoning change, there'd be, I think, one final notification required in the paper, and then it would take effect. And so then at that point, the property is rezoned. For any other additional work to occur, the applicant would need to apply and go through a special condition use approval process, which goes through the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees, and then also would need to go through a site plan approval process, which sits just with the Planning Commission. So that's where we are in the item. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
I'd make a amendment that we approve the zoning map amendment ordinance 2019-02 and publish notice of adoption in the newspaper.
Support.
Okay, motion and support. Discussion, and then we do what, this will be a roll call. Okay. Any discussion?
Well, we talked about this.
Discuss
We
this
discussed this
now, I
pretty
think.
much a month ago.
You know what's going on.
Yeah, and we all approved at that point, so there's really not a whole lot that's changed since then, I don't suspect. I think it's been a good project with some of the things, as I mentioned last time, going in, and just would like to say I'd like to see a grocery store go there next, so anyway,
just
that's,
lost one.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it'd be nice to see that going there, so maybe you can pass that on.
All right.
Ben, yes,
Yes, sir.
if I may, playing off what has already been said, that project's developing. We see a lot of activity in the most recent restaurant tavern that's established there, and apparently there's a demand for more the storage portion of their business, and we looked at the map, and we know how it fits, and we see how the Planning Commission has carefully reviewed the item, and public's had plenty of opportunity to comment. They did at the Planning Commission meetings. They had additional opportunity here. Of course, we've heard none, but Yeah, I'm all ready to vote in favor of adoption of this zoning map amendment.
Any further discussion before we put it to vote? All right, this time we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of, and the motion was the approval of the zoning map amendment ordinance 2019-02 to rezone a portion of R3A multifamily residential district to B5 highway business district located at South Lincoln Road. Clerk Cody?
Supervisor Gunning,
Yes.
Treasurer Rice,
Yes.
Trustee Hauk,
Yes.
Trustee Micus,
Yes.
Trustee Worley,
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
All right, unanimous, and that motion is approved.
Go home and see your baby.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for the
Yep.
accommodation.
Yeah.
Have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
Safe
All right.
travels.
Item B, which was item A, and this is our 2% spring request to the Saginaw Chippewa and Indian Tribe. I asked to have this put on so we could discuss it and vote on it. And so, Norm, you're involved with this, so I'm
Right.
going to let you lead it in.
Okay. This has to do with the spring 2% request. Currently, there's 3 items that are up for the board's consideration and possible approval. The first 2 items that I'm going to go through, and I'll kind of go through each one, all 3, and then we can go from there and just give you an overview. The first 2 were previously approved by the board in the last cycle, and it's also been approved in our 2019 budget. But they were denied in the fall request when they went through just previously. So the first one for consideration would be for the connector pathway between Deerfield Road and going through CMU to the stadium, to baseball park. And this was promoted and approved by this board last cycle. And the project is really an attempt to redirect student pedestrian traffic away from Crawford Road through campus, from Deerfield particularly, where you have a lot of student complexes there, and getting that student population to going through the campus. It's not a perfect situation in terms of Crawford Road, but the connector thing was something that we all were pretty excited about last time around. But the last time, from my understanding, it was not approved because no pathways were approved in the last cycle by the tribe. They felt that they had already approved quite a few pathways, and they were taking sort of like a lull on that, so that they could give other projects some priority. The second one for consideration for the board would be the Jamison Park rehabilitation design work. So the building and the park have long been in need of updating, as you know. And this is also one of our voter precincts. And with the 2020 presidential election right around the corner, I think the timing is right for this particular project. Again, this project was also approved by the board for the fall cycle, but it was denied for funding. So they've continued, I'm assuming, to be a priority item for this board going forward, just based on the fact that they were denied, but we still wanted to see these things being done. So that was part of the discussion. Also, last cycle, as you recall, we submitted a joint request along with Mount Pleasant for funding and upgrading of our baseball fields and facilities in anticipation of this summer's Little League World Series district games. This will be the first time ever that's ever been here in Mount Pleasant area. And this is both Union Township and Mount Pleasant for us to be sponsors in this. And this was approved in the last cycle. And that's an important one because I think this is really exciting for the youth of the township and for their families in terms of participating and spectating for the sport. This was something that the tribe really wanted as well in collaborating with Mount Pleasant and with us. Felt that this is a type of project that will bring in more traffic flow coming to the Mount Pleasant area. in terms of business, in terms of commerce. You know, we're going to see more activity. I think it's a 5-day event, so we're going to see hotels, restaurants, the casino, CMU, retail. It really puts us on the map as a destination site. So that was a project for, you know, for us to consider as well. The third one for board approval, on Monday afternoon, I received a email from Jim McLean from the Little League program, and he would like to see us consider a 2% request for a defibrillator for McDonald Park. The recommended request specifically, I emailed back and, you know, to find out, you know, how much would it cost and what's he asking for, et cetera. So we'd have some, I could give you that data today. I'd also then called Mark to let him know about this as well and let him know I was going to bring it to the board for their approval. So it's called a Phillips Head Start on-site AED. And that goes for just $1,240. I mean, we're not talking mega bucks here when we're talking about these budgets. And a wall mount kit to hold the defibrillator is another $100. So it'd be like about $1,340. It's my understanding in talking to Jim that Mount Pleasant already has 2 defibrillators on site at their ball fields. And being that, you know, this is something in terms of the tournament going to be here this summer. This is a significant safety issue. So, you know, I think we want to do everything that we can do proactively regarding this. So these are the current requests that we were talking about for board consideration and approval. And also, we still have time if there's any other items that the board would want to put on the agenda as well, because again, we have until the 31st. The other thing I want to suggest is that I think moving forward, we should probably do this sooner rather than later, develop a wish list. So I think what would be really good for us to do is to be able to sit down and, you know, even in different meetings, like, you know, I was thinking maybe I'd like to do this road project and this would be a good thing to do, or maybe this, you know, sidewalks doing something or another pathway. I believe what we should do is have a wish list, because that would enable me to go to the tribe when we're talking about some of these things and throw out these ideas, and then we can decide from a wish list which are the ones that you'd want to see promoted. You know, and since I'm sort of the point man as a liaison here, I'd be glad to throw that out and then bring it back to you for the approval. So I think a wish list would help me a lot too in knowing where we want to go with this. That's basically where we're at right now. Those are the 3 requests. I don't know if, again, assuming that we approved the other 2 in the last go round, but we didn't get those approved. I think there's the feedback is that they weren't approved the last time, but there's a good probability that they could be considered this time round. So again, never guarantees, but I'm just trying to give you the feedback that I have. And I wanted to save all this to say it in person so that you as a board can, 1, deliberate on it, we can discuss it, and also, you know, decide if you want to approve these things or not.
I want to piggyback on that. Do we know when the fall disbursement is?
I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's in September. And so we would have time, you know what I mean? And we should start like talking about these things now.
I got our meeting schedule all the way through, and so the year. And I'm big on setting deadlines. And I think that we should probably make a note and pick out when we want to start discussing. Because otherwise I think the date comes quick and then all of a sudden we're scurrying trying to figure out something to submit.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we need to talk about.
My sense is that it would be a good idea maybe in, say, like by May, June, to start talking about this in anticipation. The way the whole baseball thing came up last year for the baseball fields and facilities, I was at a all-day event, which was for the honoring and remembrance. It's on June 6th of every year, where the tribe has a ceremony for the whole day over at the old boarding school. And it's in tribute to the youth that had had lost their lives there, and I forget the exact number, but I think it was like 200 and something kids died at that facility. It's a very sacred ceremony, and it's really nicely done, and you just see so many aspects of the culture and the traditions and that. And it was at that point when Eric had talked to me when we threw out, hey, what do you think about Mount Pleasant and Union Township getting together to do this collaborative approach to work on the baseball fields. And so I brought it back to the board. Everyone thought that was great. And so a lot of times this is just done in cooperation and collaboration. And because as much as we want to see our constituents getting their needs met, it's a cooperative effort because they also want to make sure the tribal members' needs are being met in this process as well. So my suggestion would be that maybe by, I don't know, May, June, maybe the latest,
We have a May 22nd board meeting and we have a June 12th board meeting.
Let's do the June 12th because at June 6th I will be going to that ceremony again.
All right, well,
then I will probably
let's write that down as June 12th is when we want to start having, and we'll do a reminder on the 22nd that we want to start having like a list of ideas put together.
Yeah.
And so we have a deadline now in place that everybody here on the board can be involved with, that where we can come up, because I know Bill had a wonderful idea about a pathway on was it Bamber, Bill, that you were talking about, or was it
from like the subdivision over here? I can't think of over on.
On McDonald subdivision.
No, the one behind that.
Oh,
too.
O'Connor.
So go from O'Connor through like McDonald, through like Scully, and then maybe up through here, connect to the Commission on Aging, connect to what is the next Senior Citizen Center down here, and then maybe go to Green Acres.
That would be a wonderful idea, and actually there are a number of Native Americans that live in the O'Connor subdivision as well as McDonald, and one of the in campaigning, one of the items that some of the folks talked to me about would be a connector pathway connecting the two neighborhoods, so that fits perfectly. The other one that I think we would be perhaps ready to start looking into would be the Crawford Harris Road. So going from Fox Run, because the neighbors have been asking for a pathway.
The dog park all the way down.
Going down to the dog park.
Yep.
There's another little area that both Mount Pleasant and we own, and then going all the way down because we have Coin now giving us the right of way on that property. So that would go all the way from River down to Pickert. And the neat thing about that, it would be on the east side, but we'd also allow traffic flow going down past the boarding school, and I think that would be a really nice connector for everyone in that regard.
And Michigan Pathways, I think, wants to try to work themselves towards Clare.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that would be a thing. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's the good thing about having this conversation now is that this gets us engaged, right, and gets the wheels turning a little bit and allows all of us to kind of get involved in this process and listen to the community and see, who's out there and what other ideas are out there, right? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ben, when it comes to involvement of this board and other, members of our community, let's keep in mind as we're talking about sidewalks and potential 2% funding that the sidewalk committee should be involved in that. It's their charge, if you will, to look at prioritization of sidewalks. And there has been discussion at meetings, our past meeting, and it may even be, and it will be at future meetings, prioritization. Where do we want to recommend prioritization for sidewalks? So I really see an important role for the sidewalk committee.
Yeah.
And I'll just share with you, as we think about ideas for this subject of sidewalks and pathways and the 2% funding, that we want to get into closing some gaps, at least having sidewalks on one side of the road in areas where they've already begun. So that's been kind of that has been a vision of the sidewalk committee based on other documents that we've already approved, like our non-motorized transportation plan and other activities. So I just share that with you now, so that as we move forward, it's on our radar screen. Thank you.
And then one thing, you know, along in that same vein, Phil, and I don't want to get too far off into another direction, but when we talk about pathways, just something in the back of my mind, it seems like as far as our township is concerned, there's a little bit of a fog as to what constitutes a pathway. And so maybe that's something that when you go back to your board, that would be maybe something that where maybe some type of parameters or definitions, maybe some study. I know the MDOT has a completely different view towards what a pathway is as opposed to like CMU. Has a different standard. And I don't know as if we have a standard in any of our ordinances. We talk sidewalks, but I don't know if we have a necessarily pathway definition, do we?
You do.
Do we?
Yeah.
And Mark would be a good person to address that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a sidewalk and pathways ordinance, that's the actual name of it, pathways, and it defines dimensions for both sidewalks and pathways and what's the preferred use on one versus the other.
Okay.
And then you have a, still what I would consider fairly current, useful, rather large sidewalk and I guess I'll call it non-motorized transportation plan that the township helped pay for that has been guiding the sidewalk committee through much of their work. And if I may, while I'm talking,
Certainly.
As it relates to the discussion on the 2% and the timing and all that, a couple things come to mind. You really should start your discussion on that with your budget development, you know, at the beginning of a year. And you really don't want to just, if you wait till June to start talking about your October, you're really probably not going to have enough time to, if the thing is significant, to get it engineered, get some decent cost estimates, those kinds of things. So you kind of want to make this an ongoing part of your world, so to speak. And just as we have in the policy governance a whole schedule of things that we try to do at certain times of the year, you might want to have us look into where this type of discussion would fit in your calendar. I could see an initial discussion on your 2% going through budget development because it may need a match. You know, it may need a match, and so you need to start planning in that then. And then that gets the ball rolling, and then you have a spring time, and you're going to want to meet a little bit ahead of that. One of the things I don't know that you've actually ever done is you mentioned that the board approved these requests. No, I don't know if the board really approved anything in the past. They've given nods, but they haven't voted. If you're looking at trying to be like the county or the city, they actually vote on this stuff. And so if you're looking for that kind of approval, that's different than what you've been doing in the past. And you may want to consider, I mean, your focus seems to be on the 2% grant, but if you're looking to have the board give approval for grant applications, are you confining that to just the 2%? Or do you want to approve all grant applications? And there's pluses and minuses to that. You may not want to do all that, but you might want to do the 2% because it's a little bit more local. But, you know, do you want to make sure that you all are approving a grant application? You have to approve a grant award already, but do you want to approve grant applications? Because there might be something that comes along that we just apply for that, you know, oh, we got to wait and get your approval. And so when your approval for applying for free money, seems kind of, sometimes some communities do it, some go, no, we approve it when we are awarded, we could reject it or not. But so there's those kinds of things associated with grants, whether you're talking about just 2%, and then how you really want to build in your discussion and arriving at what you want to apply for so that you can have a good application with some decent design behind it. And I know you were just talking about pathways, but you know, I can see a sustainability committee wanting to have a 2% for a recycle drop-off site. And, you know, those are things that you want to capture in your budget development
And
in
nothing,
the first place, I think.
Yeah, we had that one turnaround. Didn't we apply the one time, take the recycling center that we were talking about on Deerfield, and didn't we try to get a 2% on it at one point in time, like maybe 3 years ago or something, or maybe it was before I was on the board, I can't remember.
The township did make an application to the state of Michigan regarding that
Okay.
proposed drop-off site.
you know, and nothing prevents us from submitting multiple projects. There's not a limit. I mean, if you want to put in 25 requests, you can do it. But just to give you an idea how precious the gift we get is, if I'm not mistaken, the last cycle in spring, I believe it was there were $12 million in requests for the 2%, and only $2.5 million was actually distributed in terms of the 2% allocation. So you can see the number of projects that didn't get it. So my feeling is that when we get anything, I just feel grateful, you know, because it's a gift that it's for the tribe giving us that gift, and it's their vision of seeing 7 generations ahead benefiting from that gift. So, but again, if we have multiple projects, we can submit them, or we can say, you know, these are the 3 or 4 we'd really like to push for, and I can, you know, I can talk. Mark talks to Erica, so you can talk. You know, anyone can talk. Since I'm the liaison, I have no problem spending the time and putting in the effort. But these are things that we can all do, and I think we need to do that.
Yeah.
So I just want to go back then. Is everyone then, are you all comfortable with these 3 requests for the pathway connector, and then for pathway conductor, and then also for the Jamison Field House, Jamison Park, and then also for the defibrillator for the Little League? Or
On number 3, don't request it. I'll make sure that's taken care of. Okay. I'll take care of
okay,
it. If that's
I'll
okay.
talk to you.
I mean, okay.
Okay,
If you're going to talk to McLean.
okay, yeah, okay.
I'll talk to Keith too. I'll take care of it.
Okay. So is there anything else that you want to see be put on for this go-round? Because like I said, because we still can, you know, so you have the 31st, so we have time to do it. You know, the nice one that I thought was
We
when
don't
we
really
did.
have a lot of time, we only got till.
You have a few days, and
Yeah,
if it
but-
requires any, you know, design research,
Right.
you know, unless it's a piece of
It has to be
equipment that we can
reasonable.
look up how much it is on the internet for an idea,
Yeah.
you don't have much time.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, we probably just need to just keep it at this.
Okay. Are
And
we
then
in
we're
agreement
making
then?
a solemn promise that we're going to make sure that we talk about it, research it, and come up with.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Would you like me to, the way you get this stuff built into your systems, so it becomes routine, you know, is I could recommend which months during the year and amend your governance policy. We address each of those policies at the second meeting of each month, and there's a calendar in there that you'd be able to, you know, I could recommend, I don't know, June or July for the October, and that way it's codified, it's written, you're not going to forget about it. Otherwise, it's just minutes in a
Yeah.
meeting minutes.
And that's what
somewhere.
we need to do.
Sounds like a better idea than my sticky note process I use so often.
Mhm.
And that's helpful too, is like, the example would be the Isabella Road. You know, how we did the 3 intersections, for the safety and for the traffic flow, went along with MDOT, us, and the tribe. But we did that in advance. That was a planned out thing.
There was a year and a half of work before we understood what it was, what we could
Exactly.
submit on an application.
So we can go big, but we need to make sure we have it planned and we know what.
And you can
what's
take
go-
it in bits and pieces. too.
Bingo, exactly.
And Ben, if I might, in all seriousness, I think we should give Mark the direction to do that, to insert this 2% review process on a schedule into our policy governance document so that it's there for us.
Yep. Bill?
Well, I was just gonna say, when we get appointed to boards and everything, we get paid to go to these meetings. I don't know, does Norm get paid to go to the tribal council meetings? I mean, I think it's important that we have someone there.
I've never submitted anything as it's not included in our policy governance. As we made it official that I'm going to be the liaison, but we never made it official as this is one of those boards, like, going to the
MTA.
city, going to the road commission. But
On that point, and
I've
it
never
may
submitted.
require a little bit of massaging, but the public isn't allowed at the tribal council meeting like we are at the county board. And so Norm can't just show up and put down his calendar.
you can be sponsored, which I've been before.
Right.
You know.
And you certainly should be compensated if everybody else is for
Yeah.
those kind of things. The board, depending on what you do with the chief or the Erics of the world, if you're having a routine meeting, maybe to get to your point of compensation, but it's not as simple as just showing up on the second Monday.
Right. It's a different form of government.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
No, we can broach that. We have to make the changes on
The next,
for the meetings, as far as getting the 2%, we could kind of do it all at the same time. You want to negotiate how much you're going to get, or what?
Can we approve that now? I mean, make-
$10 or
Right.
$10 in
well,
a
we gotta
McDonald's
probably have the
hamburger?
wording for it, maybe for the next meeting for it,
All right.
because you'd have to have the right wording.
You just
Or-
wanna
or
make
no,
sure
or
you're
just add it on.
between like a pre-scheduled meeting that he's having with some leaders of the tribe versus
Right.
an ad hoc meeting that then all
Right.
of a sudden you get a request for payment on.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'll have 5 of those a week.
Well, can we do that
Yeah.
next meeting then?
We could do that,
Can you?
yeah. We could do that.
I
Alright.
can put together some draft language that you
Alright.
can react to and have it on the agenda.
So, back to our original discussion was we apparently are taking the defibrillator off and we're going with the connector and the Jameson Park upgrades.
Correct.
Okay. All right, and do we have, what is our requests amounts?
I don't know.
I don't
what-
have it on me.
Mark.
You have it on you?
The Jameson Park is a 50-50 cost share with EDA. And I want to say
Can't remember
the
what
ask
that
is
was.
7,500-ish, something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't that much, was
No,
it?
no.
Yeah.
And
That
then
was
the
plan, yeah.
connector,
That was more.
and it's actually the ask for the 2% is from Denison to the baseball field, not the section from
Right.
Deerfield to Denison. So there's 2 parts to that whole connector, but only one qualifies for the 2% because only one is part of the Michigan Pathways Group's plan. And I'll have to email you, it'd just be a guess. I can't recall if it's 400 or 200, but
So
it's a
it-
couple
this-
hundred,
this
it's at
would
least
just
a
be
couple
from-
100,000.
From Denison and filling in the gap at Tennyson Stadium then?
It would be from what I refer to as the incubator,
Uh,
Right.
Right.
which
yep.
is, I think, on Denison.
Uh-huh.
And there's some existing pathway
Using the existing.
that ends at Dennison and Three Leaf,
Yeah.
and the new piece is
Going in
going
by
north on
Dennison.
Three Leaf to the baseball field,
Mm-hmm.
where there is existing pathway that starts up again that heads all the way up to Broomfield.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
But it is not, it does not cover going from actually from the Deerfield, as I said, to getting to the,
Well, that's kind of funky, because we were
Yeah.
talking about using like sidewalk next to a building
Right.
and all that stuff. and
Exactly.
That has to get figured out.
There's two phases to the project. This ask for the 2%
Yeah.
is on the phase that's, I'll say,
Okay.
from Dennison
Yeah.
to the ball field.
yeah, exactly.
All right. And is that just our request, or is it a joint with the city? And, because I know originally our discussion was city and
The budget, and again, I'm kind of going from memory. There's a contribution of property, in-kind, construction administration, and perpetual maintenance of the thing by CMU. Tribal contribution to help pay for the construction. A township amount that we've had budgeted. And then one or two gaps in the financing that we would be pursuing, and the city is one of them, and I've had some discussion there. That, but the two big ones would be the tribe, the CMU, and us. And then I want to say there might be a $50,000 hole that then we'd start banging on doors to fill.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. And so, any questions at this point in time? Are we comfortable going ahead and putting forth a motion and a vote?
Should we make that, should we do it like now as motion? Should we? Because
I think we should. I think
I
I'd like
don't
to get to have
disagree.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd make,
Do it for each
should we do them separate? Or want to just say that this is what we're going to do in this packet, maybe the next time do it?
Well, I think, in the future, as we go through this, then they'd probably be presented. I mean, we'd obviously have a fairly good idea, but maybe they should be separate.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that we actually need a motion for these
To submit
to
them.
apply, just to submit what I'm doing.
We're
Well, that's
agreeing-
up to the
we're-
board, but my sense is the
Yeah.
board wants some formal action.
Okay.
Moving forward, and moving forward, what you're gonna get, if you approve the policy governance thing, is eventually a request for board action or a study session.
Right.
And you're gonna agree to this, to these applications being submitted.
So I think we should
You don't
do-
need separate, just do a motion.
Just do a
to
motion together?
Approve
Okay.
the application of the connector from Dennison to the baseball field and for the Jameson
Park
design.
project, yeah, the 50/50 with
part.
the EDA.
Okay. So I will make a motion that we approve the 2% request, one for the connector pathway between Dennison and the Tennyson Field, baseball field. And I'm also going to, and also that we include Jameson Park rehabilitation design work to be approved as well. Is that
Yep.
sufficient? Okay.
Do we have a second on that?
I'll support it.
Okay, we do have motion support. At this point, any further discussion?
No.
Okay,
No.
let's put this for vote. This will be for the approval of the 2% projects that Trustee Worley just brought up in his motion for the connector on the CMU campus and also on the Jameson Park rehabilitation plans. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Good.
thank you. I appreciate that, you guys. All right. Item B, and this is going to be another action item. This is going to be the approval of the 2019 Township Brine participation with the Isabella County Road Commission. Mark, I'll have you lead this one in.
So this is an annual contract with the Road Commission, the 2019 brine participation contract in the amount of $18,306.82, authorizing the township manager to sign any requisite documents. We have, I think this is fairly accurate, although I forget whether it's 20 or 25 miles of gravel road approximately in the township. And this contract provides for 3 applications of the brine solution on these gravel roads during the, I'll say the spring, summer, and fall. And this coating improves surface stability, helps make the roads last a little longer, kind of keeps the dust down a little bit. So we're recommending approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2019 brine participation contract with the Isabella County Road Commission and authorize the manager to sign the contract.
Second.
Support.
Okay. Motion support.
Sorry.
Cheers. Discussion? No. All right. All in favor of approving the 2019 Township brine participation contract with Isabella County Road Commission and authorize the township manager sign said contract for $18,306.82, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We move on to the next item on the agenda. This is item D. This is going to be to consider the approval of a job description of Community and Economic Development Department Director. Mark?
Thank you. Back in 2018, the board approved this position as a new position within the organization, Community and Economic Development Director. The job description has not been approved, and so that is the item in front of you tonight, and this is all part of effectuating the larger effort to help reshape the organization to meet the changing needs of the community. The complexity of the community and the organization continues to increase. The breadth and depth of service delivery increases, and to adequately meet this changing environment, the board in prior action has agreed that additional senior management resources are needed. This position will improve organizational policy development, implementation, improve and maybe increase service delivery opportunities for the community, help improve organizational accountability. And the functional areas that are under this department, there is a functional org chart in your agenda packet, but it includes things such as this department holding the functional items such as land use, planning, zoning, that type of thing, building, the building area, whether it's the building official, plan review, enforcement related, rental registration, inspection, and then also a component of economic development where we'd hope that this individual would get out and in conjunction with the MEDC or MMDC, do some calls on area businesses to make sure their needs are being met. All that is described in greater detail in the job description. The knowledge and experience that is contained in this description is a master's degree in urban planning or public administration, related field, with 7 or more years of experience in this area, progressively more responsible experience. Having managed departments such as this, budgeting and HR aspects of it, project management, those kinds of things. The description in your packet goes into a little bit more detail in terms of the required knowledge and skills. The funding for this position was approved in the 19 budget. There is, when you combine salary and benefits, $94,000 budgeted for this position. 63,000 is on the salary side. 31 is on the benefits. The majority of that is health care. It is noted that this position is part of the compensation and classification study, so that may produce some different range in terms of salary. It's not anticipated that this position would be put out for advertisement until that study came back, so we had a more solid understanding what the market is for this. So that's the overview, and as in the past, we're asking for this job description to be considered and approved. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. I think the job description, the responsibility requirements is very thorough. I mean, it really outlines the expectations and the requirements and education experience, etc. I think maybe one thing that might be helpful for the board, Mark, if you could maybe give your rationale as to does the current staffing and workload substantiate at this time the current need for this position? You know, I mean, so, you know, if you can give us a rationale as to, is it needed right now based on the volume of work and on the staffing that we currently have?
Yeah, I can recap that, you know, the board and the administration has had that conversation we had 2 years ago. And at the time, this board, indicated that there was that need. The question was asked earlier tonight about the volume of planning, land use related activities, and the growth of the township, and the number of site plans, the number of building permits, the emphasis that this body has made on enforcement. The resource doesn't exist right now to accomplish all that in a good, sound, professional manner, which is, you know, what this body has been wanting the township to grow towards. And so yeah, there's a clear need, and from a management perspective, by having this individual as a department director, the zoning administrator or planner that currently is in the workforce, the building official, the rental and registration individual, the building clerk, all will get more dedicated time from a support, supervision, all those things that go into play when you have an adequate supervisory to, you know, employee type of ratio. And by having those that resource available to those people, decisions will be able to be made quicker. We'll be able to be more proactive, you know, maybe getting out into the field in a scheduled manner for enforcement, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. And the other question I have is so there's 5 top management positions according to the flow chart that will eventually be filled. Could you see that any of those positions could be consumed or collapsed into another to narrow down for, you know, in terms of costs and that? Or
actually there's not 5. There's a functional organizational chart here.
Right.
But there is only 3 department directors. The functional areas of risk management and information technology those are primarily, those are all things that I'm doing right now. There's not an anticipation that there'd be a risk management department.
Okay.
We're not nearly big enough for that.
Okay, so that wouldn't be, so then it wouldn't be that, for example, that.
But for a functional perspective, we do have a risk management function, and we have an IT function that this organization pays for and manages.
Mhm. So some of those responsibilities could perhaps be shared or spread across the other positions? You know, so
Those
then-
are mostly mine right now.
Mhm.
What it would, what you're talking about is having a finance department director, a public services department director, and a community and economic development department director that are, two of those, and even the third to a degree, not to a degree, but are new positions for the organization.
Okay.
With new responsibilities, and in some cases the activities were occurring, but the organization was not defined in a way that the individuals could be held accountable. That was just where the activity was occurring. And so this is formalizing the organization. It, for instance, you know, I am not going to spend, I just can't. I can't spend much time with the rental and registration program, but somebody needs to, and that function needs to thrive. And this position would allow that to happen, which is important. You know, we have a large rental population, and it's a safety issue. So, you know, they need to be able to meet with somebody when they need to,
Yes.
to, you know, get business taken care of. And, you know, same with the, you know, code enforcement. You know, same with the, you know, land use. I support Peter. I spend a lot of time with Peter, and I don't have technical background in land use, you know, but this individual would. So you know, Peter would be much better served with somebody other than me.
Yeah, I like the code enforcement aspect, because one, that was something that was in our survey going back. Residents were saying that they would want to see better code enforcement of ordinances. And second, it coincides now with the fact that we're actually updating, since 1990, all our zoning ordinances. But to have someone actually who can do that job and to do it quickly, because there's been things with blight, there's been issues with, you know, that we've had,
Right.
that we haven't been able to address.
Staff provides administrative support to the Planning Commission, the EDA, the ZBA, Sidewalk Committee, Sustainability. This position would be responsible for a lot of that support. And, you know, almost by definition, that support is going to improve, because we're adding 40 hours of productive time to the organization to get some work
Right.
done.
So I have two questions. Is with this position, do we see a movement towards a full-time building official as opposed to contracted?
That movement is not stopped.
Okay.
That
All right.
position is part of the compensation committee
Okay.
or study,
Okay.
and
So that's something that we'll start moving on when we get that back.
there would be a couple things. One, we get the study back.
Mhm.
We understand what the market is. And then this position, once we get the study back, we get this position filled, and, you know, ideally this position would help in the hiring process of this person if the timing was good enough. We're not going to wait forever,
Okay.
because they would be a direct report of this position.
Two, how do you see code enforcement evolving within the scope of this position? Is code enforcement going to be something that we're going to hire somebody to handle that specific task? I think it's hard to have the situation now where we're sending our zoning official out when he's looking back at his office pretty overwhelmed. and so
Right.
the reason why I ask that
So-
is that,
right.
let me finish, is the reason why I ask that is in board of review, we've had 3 different parcels of property come up where the people are living next door to junkyards. And
One of them's a Brad Wood.
one of them's
think.
Bradwood, and the other one's over towards Marymount Wire School. And so.
And you know the story on those. The
Oh,
Brad
yeah, yeah,
Wood
those are-
goes
yeah.
back into court 10 years ago, and
Yeah.
we have a court filing. But yeah,
You gotta locate the guy.
to get to your
Yeah.
question, code enforcement, there are several aspects of it. There's zoning code, there's zoning ordinance code enforcement, and there's general code, general ordinance code enforcement. And you'll find in your ordinances, throughout the ordinances, there are a number of different positions that actually have enforcement authority depending on what we're talking about. In some sections of the zoning, of the codes, whether it's zoning or general, the building official will be the, will have specific enforcement that position's listed in the code. In some cases, it's the zoning administrator, and in some cases, it's the rental person. So the position within the organization that has the enforcement authority is spread out.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about code enforcement, a couple things are occurring to me, and I don't have all the answers yet,
Mhm.
but this position with the land use planning background would quite possibly assume a lot of the more planning-related activities
Mhm.
that could free up Peter, who, depending on if you're looking at the wall sign or the job description or what, is either called a zoning administrator or a planner. Those are 2 different positions. You know, he might be more focused on a zoning administrator type of activity, which a greater percentage of that position would be in enforcement related stuff, because that's kind of what zoning administration is. And then there also needs to be some work, I think, within the ordinance, because depending on what section you're reading, it says a different position in terms of who the enforcement authority is.
Mhm.
And so half the time we're looking up, well, who, is this a Peter thing? Is this a building official thing? Is this a Larry thing? You know, and so, because you gotta have the right person signing the notice and the letter and
Mhm.
those kind of things. But it will clearly allow for more amplified enforcement across both the general code of ordinances and the zoning code of ordinances. How that exactly looks, you know, I can't tell you, but I just know that that's one of the reasons we're doing this.
Gotcha. So basically, you're saying is going to free them up to be able to handle more of those items, because this particular position will take some of the burden off of what they're currently doing, but also maybe.
It'll take some of the burden off what they're currently doing, give them some direction, give them some management, somebody that can be a little more hands-on, hold accountable. Like I said a few minutes ago, maybe even, you know, we can create an environment where there's, you know, somebody out in the field, you know, 5 hours a week, just driving around looking for, you know, trying to find. Because right now we just respond to
Yeah.
calls. Put somebody out in the field that's actually going around looking for these violations, which we don't do at all right now.
Yeah, yeah, and that was I know the city has, 2 full-time and 1 part-time or something like that, but, yeah, that was, I wasn't sure if the idea is we get this in place, that we maybe free some of these people up to do their own things, and if we are going to maybe hire somebody on a full-time or part-time basis to be able to do that, or if we throw one of these people in a truck to do that, so.
Well, there'd be an iteration. I mean, we're not,
Yeah.
I'm not anticipating hiring a code enforcement officer. It's just too early to know that.
Mhm.
We're gonna make a lot of progress just doing this.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
I'm
Ben,
good.
along that line,
Yes, sir.
if I may, I'd like to move that we approve the job description for the position of Community and Economic Development Department Director.
I'll support.
Okay, motion and support. Further discussion on this item?
Yeah, Ben,
Yes, sir.
I guess I'd be summarizing what I've heard discussed already on this subject with these notes that I took as I was reviewing this, that I see the establishment of this position would contribute to making Union Township a better place to live and work. You know, we're going to have improved services to the community, and this will be leading the way to better enforcement, or just, you know, enforcement of our ordinances, both zoning and general ordinances. So that's why I'm moving that we approve this, and I'll be voting for it.
I'm happy to see that we're gonna do a wage comparison on this, you know, just because, I mean, I got a thing from the county where their community development director, you know, after, like at 10 years, they make $66,800. So someone starting out in their first year, it's $50,054, or $54,054. But I'm happy to get the explanation of this chart, because right offhand coming in here tonight, I thought, okay, we're gonna have 5 department heads plus you, and I'm thinking, you know, there's wages, benefits, and everything, $650,000, $700,000 a year. And
No, that's not a personnel org chart. That's a.
No,
what
but
call-
I mean, you explained it where now these other two, I mean, I understand a finance director, I understand community development director, so I'm a little more at ease now.
Hey, Bill, on the thing you had from the county, is that just the wages? Because we're including in our thing here both wages and benefits.
That's just wages, and then there's a benefits breakdown in the back. They do their benefits differently than we do. So,
I did receive a copy of that. I think you talked to Margaret,
Yeah.
she said.
yeah.
And so I looked at that, and, I mean, you mentioned a
She
moment
said she was
ago.
gonna call you. I talked
Yeah,
to Margaret
right.
today, and I said, yeah, call Mark, you know.
And this position is looking for 7 years of experience, and we had, you know, by looking around, some educated guess, we had, what was it, 63,000 a year.
Yeah,
And
something
that
like
chart,
that.
I believe, at 10 years is
Benefits on
66 or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
so
very
it feels like
comparable.
it's in the ballpark.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because if that's
you want a
just the
good- You
wages,
want a
then,
good candidate, too.
yeah,
You don't want to
yeah.
have somebody that's a greenhorn, you want to have someone with some experience.
Yeah, you want both the experience and you want to be able to get qualified people, and it does mean that you're going to be paying for that person, so.
And all that, you know, just remember, the whole organization's going through a classification compensation study.
Gotcha.
So, you know, whether or not that information's in the market or our current is in the market, we're gonna find that out, and we'll have to address whatever that shows.
So
plus
that
or
would be,
minus.
that would be adjusted then, either way, up or down, depending on what the wage study says, and you're saying, I would.
Available resources and all
Gotcha,
that, you
yeah.
know. I mean, it can, I doubt if we're right at the market,
Mhm.
you know, on every position. Some are gonna be above, some are gonna be below. And the organization, the board's gonna have to figure out how they want to make adjustments, if they wanna make any adjustments to address the places where you're over or under market.
Call the
All right.
question.
Did you say
Going
something
once,
else?
going
Call the
twice.
question.
Get your questions in now, or else you're not going to get them in.
Call the question.
That would be you.
Call the vote.
What's that?
Call the vote.
Call the vote,
Is
ready?
what he's saying, yeah.
All right, so this would be approving of the job description of Community and Economic Development Director, Department Director. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry.
Thank you very much.
And thank you.
Thanks.
And, gosh, I'm all out of whack here, because we're not, now we're on to
Policy government.
Policy governance.
policy governance, old policy governance. Okay, this is strictly, this isn't an action item, right? We're just
Right, just
discussing.
discussion.
Right, this is just a discussion item. Like I said, the calendaring for the policy governance, policy number 3.3, board member code of conduct, is to be reviewed on an annual basis in the month of March. And the policy is in your agenda packet. It's rather lengthy. I'm not going to go through it all. But this is a discussion for the board, not for me.
Well, who would like to start the old discussion?
Well, Ben, I will. I feel that we've really looked at board, our code of, what I want to say is, we've looked at our conduct. We've reviewed our conduct in the past several months. And this is a great opportunity to look at our particular code of conduct to remind us how to conduct ourselves in our meetings. And of course, I believe that this code of conduct is really in a bigger picture for the purpose of the people of our community, because people of our community are the only reason that we're here. So there's this, we have this need to be committed to providing ethical and responsible local government so that everyone can enjoy the benefits of living and working in our township. And so that's my comment, Ben.
All right. The politician that you are. He's talked a lot, but I don't know if it really meant anything.
I agree with everything.
Well, thanks, Lisa.
I do.
I followed.
That's kind
Well,
of
you
like, yeah,
summed it up
what
a
did you
lot better
say?
than I could ever say it, but yeah,
I
There you
followed.
go.
We're
good job.
Yeah.
You guys are wonderful.
Close for discussion.
Bill.
I really don't have anything. I wrote a couple of notes down, but Bill pretty much covered them.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I wonder is, I mean, I've been questioned. I mean, I work for McGurk's. I do business with them. Why should I be asked by members of this board whether it's okay if I work for them? Why should I be asked if I mean, it's my business. I have to work, and there are gonna be conflicts of interest with me, not with them, but with many people. And every time I've ran into something like that, if I'm personally involved with a job, then I abstain from voting.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to let that point out there.
Good.
I think that's admirable, Bill. And I think I think the only way where conflict of interest would be an issue is that if by working for someone or having a relationship with someone, if that would, affect your voting, they'd be more biased or you might be prejudiced in terms of your vote, and your vote should be neutral. I mean, it shouldn't be based on the client or the applicant or it should be just based on the facts that we have before us. So as long as you're making that differentiation, and I think you do, I have no problem with you doing, you have a business too, so there's going to be overlap in small communities like this.
I've always felt you've been pretty ethical on that. Whenever there's been a
Mm-hmm.
conflict, you've always brought it up, as far as I know.
All right, well, thank you.
So,
That's all I have.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Nope, you
Do you have
good.
anything?
Yeah.
I think overall, there's always room for improvement. I think we're moving in the right direction. You know, I think to me, there's a couple parts of this. I think it had to do with the first part, appropriate decorum, is about our tone and quality of what's being said. So, you know, I think we have to all keep in mind is maybe always think before we speak and before we push the send button. You know, make sure it's always business-like. I think that's what that's saying in this part. You just brought up the second part about avoid conflict of interest. I think it's about transparency and full disclosure. And I think we did that, for example, like when we were voting on the marijuana prohibition for the establishments, you know, where I asked the question, does anyone have any, you know, business or any intention of making business with this? I think that was important because that lets the community see that we're being transparent, that we are being fully disclosed, and there is no conflict of interest in our votes. So I think that's another part of this. The other part of it was about the 3.3, I won't go through all numbers, about the member interaction with the public, that we support, you know, that we continue to remember that we should be supporting our board decisions and supporting one another. So even if you voted against something, at the end of the day, if the board voted for, you know, you can always give your, you know, I didn't vote for that, but the board did, and so I support the board's view. I mean, that's you know, what we have to learn to do, and basically to continue to respectfully to agree to disagree. You know, we can have a robust conversation and have diverse ideas of opinion. I think that's great. I personally like that. It makes it more exciting, and it even brings out sometimes ideas for myself that I might have even changed my vote or changed my mind on something based on the arguments people are giving. Mm-hmm. And then the last one has to do with members will respect the confidentiality appropriate to the issues of sensitive nature. I just want to say it's especially, this is especially but not limited to our closed sessions. Closed sessions have to always be kept confidential, and we need to all keep that in mind. So that's what I got out of this. So I think we're working in the right direction. You know, do I see some things that could be improved? Yeah, but for myself as well, yes. But maybe we're working in the right direction, so.
And it is, you know, like Phil pointed out, it is something we have been kind of going over for the last few, months, years. You know?
Years.
And that, you know, and I think each of us are trying, you know, to really focus on the fact that, you know, we need to follow these guidelines. So.
Good point. All right. Lisa.
I already said. I
She said
piggybacked
she
off
liked
of Mike's.
She liked Phil's answer, but I can't remember what Phil said.
I could say it would have come out completely different.
Yeah.
It was an essay question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree.
I followed Phil. We're good.
Yeah. It was had its point. You know, I think we've done a lot of growing, and I think that this is something that's kind of difficult because we're passionate, and you want to be passionate,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that some of the things that we're doing now, where we're maybe, you know, I think the concept of, I read the paper. I was telling Lisa, I think, the other day about the Morning Sun. There was a article in there about, or a story about the city commission doing a work session. You know, and they had a picture of them there, and you know, none of them looked like they were really happy that they were there. You know,
Was it a sunny day?
but they were there, and they were discussing things, and I think that you know, we discussed that, and I think that the concept of setting guidelines to address 2% grant requests is a wonderful idea. I know that there was a point in time before our board came in where I believe they missed the 2% request by, I think, 2 years they didn't, or 3 years they didn't submit anything for 2% requests. And I think that those are, you know, it's important that we continue, and we've gotten grant requests. So, you know, I think that things like that and upcoming, you know, where we discuss roads, right? And it's something in my final board comment I'd like to make sure that we all do is take a strong look at what we have in our budget for roads, what the road commission has rated for roads, and drive around, you know, and take a look and use our own eyes and say, gosh, you know, it'd be really nice if this was, you know, addressed. So, and we've all have ears and we've all listened to community members, and I think that's part of 3.3 too. Right? So, yeah. With that in mind, anybody else have any further comment on 3.3? Okay, all right. Well, let's close that discussion point. And I believe that takes us completely out of new business. I'm so discombobulated with this change at the beginning that I believe that's it.
Yes.
So that would take us to extended public comment. And I know that, again, nobody's rushing to the podium at this point in time.
Sure.
Unless our guy from Mac TV would like to tell us to hurry up so we can go home. So
Sherry's
with that,
relaxed.
we
She's
close
good.
public comment. And we've moved to item 12, manager's comments. And that would be Mr. Stuhldreher.
Thank you. First, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank Kim Smith for being at the dais the other night when I was not in town here. I looked at the meeting. I thought it was a good meeting. Y'all were done shortly after an hour.
Yeah. So it's just you.
Yeah, right. Must just be me.
So can we have Kim next time?
Just a couple things. You know, we talked about building in the 2% grant discussion. Well, it's this time of year, March is the time of year where, per the policy governance, and this is all part of your goal setting, is the annual review of those ends, 1.0 through 1.6. And, you know, we took a stab at reviewing those a year ago. We did it internally. My sense was that folks weren't real happy with either the time or, you know, the outcome. We did a little bit of wordsmithing, but, you know, if the board is wanting to really try to be proactive and, you know, decide what y'all want to be focusing on, you know, these are the annual exercises that you have to go through. And, you know, I had initially recommended a facilitator a year ago, and the board decided they wanted to do it internally. I'm just bringing it up because March is the time to do it. I do have a name of a couple facilitators if the board is interested in going through a meaningful, dedicated, you know, discussion on your ends, which in some language might be called your goals or something. Otherwise, you know, what you have will continue to be what they are.
Must be like a boxing referee then, this type of thing, facilitator.
Well, no. It doesn't-
So I hear
it's
what you're
just-
saying, Mark. And
It's an
I-
annual goal setting
Yeah.
that every organization has. Yes, they're painful. They're painful to the administration, they're painful to the participants, whether they're facilitated or not, because it's about visioning and looking down the road, and we all want to just do work now, you know.
Right. So in order, if I might take some of your time, Mark, we should, I know March is going to be over, obviously, right? So we won't meet that goal, but I think it would be good for us to maybe make this happen in April, have a work session in April to address our ends, so we can start looking down the road more. So that's what I would say.
And the reason they're scheduled the way at the beginning of the year is because it kind of starts setting the stage for the budget development, which starts in, you know, July or something.
For me, later in April would be much much better, or even if we could push it to the first.
I know
if it's
you
not too-
guys,
Agreed.
Same.
Yeah, I don't have much in the way of employees. I'm hiring and training in April, and so for me, May would be better, early May or late April.
If I could just say something,
End of
first
April.
of all, I think that the flow tonight, I don't know how it felt to you, but it felt different to me tonight. It didn't feel with the conflict and some of the divisiveness that we've been going through. And I think in doing that, I just felt more got accomplished tonight because, for example, we were even able to talk more about the 2% and how we should do it differently in the future. And we even set up a date for when we should have our wish list compiled. And we did that while we're in a regular board meeting. At the same token, we were making deliberations on issues with the board. So one is that I don't rule out that we can't do some of this just like we're doing now if we can work in harmony. And again, harmony doesn't mean that we're in agreement on the issues. It means that we're respectful and we're agreeing to disagree and we work together. That's one thing. The other is that I'd like to give it a shot that if we do have a work session, let's meet just for us first. You know, the city isn't calling in a consultant, you know,
oh, they are.
Let's ask Mark
Oh,
to finish his
okay.
comments real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to respond to this, though. And so I just think that maybe what would be good is for us to give a shot at it as a first go-round.
I would be happy to facilitate such a thing. I've done it
Yeah.
before. Last year, I did not take an active role in the discussion. But I'm willing to try to facilitate the discussion. And we can see where it goes.
Yeah.
The facilitator was, you know, I know there's been some difficulty with the board working amongst itself, and sometimes, you know, you can get something more accomplished if you got a referee. I'm not planning on playing that role, but I think I can lead a discussion and get somewhere, and we'd be able to do it sooner, because, you know, if we gotta get a facilitator, you know, that's all scheduling exercise.
Costs money too.
And, you know, I'll get up there and with flip charts or whatever and walk you through a process.
Do we want
And we'll
to
see
try to
what
do
it-
this on a
see how it
weekend, or
does.
we want to try to do this during the week?
5
Did we
o'clock
even-
before our meeting.
Yeah, I would think a weekday would be best.
I don't think this is just going to be a 1-hour deal.
No,
though.
maybe a
Yeah.
couple of hours we could schedule to start off with and see how that
I think a
goes.
couple hours
And,
I
do
can
you
do
think-
Saturdays,
about
no matter
3
what. I work doubles every Saturday.
okay.
for the
Let
first
him know.
session.
I could see one session, and I could see 4 hours. Many of these take 8,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
and that's, I mean, they're brutal, they're miserable,
Uh,
because everybody has other stuff they want to do, and.
Yeah, I mean, my only
but,
thing I've got to worry about is.
Not everybody has to be here
is
the whole
my-
time, but,
Is staffing
Yeah,
and,
we're all busy, and
Yeah.
you know, maybe
Yeah.
what I would suggest, maybe instead of right now coming up with a date,
Yeah.
why don't we all look at our calendars, and at our next meeting, why don't we then all have some or we can do the doodle poll as to
Yeah.
potential dates. Yeah,
Yeah,
Jennifer likes to do
because
that.
I will not know how my schedule is going
I
to go
understand.
until after
Yeah,
this next couple weeks, or well, next week.
I can even
but-
see like a 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock on a Saturday morning. It
I
frees
can't do
everybody up for the
Saturdays at all,
afternoons.
ever.
What's that?
Saturdays I cannot do.
Oh, that's right, because you're working in the.
I work
She's
doubles
doubles.
on Saturdays. I work like 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Saturday,
Okay.
so that can't happen.
Well, we'll figure it out.
yeah, so why don't people look at their schedules and in the next meeting, and then look, and people, I want to hear say May seems to maybe be the better option, I mean, April, May, whatever, but let's take a look at our schedules and say,
Yeah, it could not happen before.
I mean, if you give it
Early
far
to
enough
late
in
April,
advance, I can
because
take it off.
I would
okay,
be
let
time
him pass
prepared.
it.
Well, I think we could.
If it's far enough in advance, I can
We
try to
could
take
shoot
it
for late
off.
April. I mean, I should be cool. I should have employees in place by
But I
then.
mean,
so-
Saturdays are just,
Sounds good, and Ben, if you, I know in your business, you're really tuned into the weather, so if you can pick that rainy Saturday, I'd be all over
I was
that.
hoping tomorrow was gonna be a rainy Friday, because I got another 8 hours in this place tomorrow. I've had to close up twice this week.
What is today?
Is that for the board?
No,
Also-
it's Thursday. Tomorrow's
Wednesday.
Thursday.
No wonder
Tomorrow's
he's
So
got-
that was one comment.
What's that?
Tomorrow's Thursday.
Oh, Friday, yeah.
Do you have any
Is
more
that part of
comments?
review?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I needed
We'll get more
to, we
comments.
needed to talk about the goal setting, so that was a comment. I've done that. The PFAS testing, there was a couple articles in the paper about that. Just want to let you know we're going to be continuing the quarterly testing. The state has stepped up and said that they're going to pay for that. We were, with your direction, we were doing quarterly testing anyways on our dime. Now the state has said they're going to pay for it. They're about $3,000 a crack. So the next one will be, we did the initial one in October, got those results back. We did another one in January. Maybe those results came back in February, and the state will be doing the next quarterly testing. They're scheduled to be April 2nd is the next test. And just to let you know, the certificate of occupancy has been issued for the Isabella admin building. Y'all need to know that, but you know, I don't like to bring up that topic because you guys don't like to talk about it. But need to let you know that that certificate of occupancy has been issued, and we could see moving in mid-April or something. And then that is it. Thank you.
All right. That brings us to final board comment. Let's see.
Joe
Start.
raised his hand, he wants to go first.
Does he want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, noticing that there's no one in the audience, so we had no extended comment. But, you know, we are streaming live on our system, either through Mac3 or the YouTube channel. And some people are commenting. I'm seeing a request here, Phil, it's after 9, come home.
Yeah. Is that your final board
hilarious.
comment?
Yes.
There you go.
That's your-
That
I
one
second
works.
that.
Okay.
That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna
was
third
good.
that one.
I like it.
I seconded his motion, so it's up to you now.
I'm good.
Norm, you have any final
No,
board
I'm
comment?
good.
Hold
I'm
me.
good.
Okay. Lisa? I have just one thing, is that I want to make sure that our next meeting, that we all have an opportunity, like I said before, to, we have a budget line for roads.
Yeah.
We have a rating system for the roads, and I think it'd be a good opportunity for us to discuss, and maybe we can put on just a discussion item on our next agenda. Our preferences to which roads we'd like to
Yeah.
address.
Yeah.
And then
This is for the graveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did have a phone call this morning at about, during physical therapy, I answered it, and it was the corporate affairs manager for Kroger. And she had contacted me to let me know that they were at 10 o'clock going to inform their employees that they were closing their store on May 25th.
86 people, I believe, is losing.
81.
I heard 81.
81.
81 people, yeah.
And so what they're doing is,
Just say it.
just to let community members know, is what the nearest Kroger store is a long distance away. I believe Saginaw maybe is the closest one,
I
maybe.
think so.
There's one in Midland.
Is there
Oh,
one in
is there?
Midland?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I wasn't sure if there still is or not.
I don't know.
So what they're doing with their employees is their human relations department has been in contact with Meijer, Aldi, Sam's Club, and Walmart. And what they're trying to do is get gainful employment for all of these people. It came down to a financial situation where over the last 3 years, they've lost a tremendous millions of dollars trying to keep this location open, and it's just simply the
always filled up.
marketplace is that a standalone traditional grocery store doesn't have the peripheral items that Myers and the Walmarts of the world do, and where they make the money in that industry is not from selling us groceries. It's the other items that we're in Meyer, and we buy a pair of shoes or whatever, or peripheral item, the oil, and that's where they make their money. And so without having that ability, that put them at kind of an issue. Now, the gist that I was able to get from her is that although they were closing the building and moving out of that building, the door is open because they have a long-standing relationship in this community. The first Kroger store was on Broadway, and then it moved across the street from the county jail. Then it moved over to Mission Street where the LaBelle building is. Then it moved over to where ABC Warehouse is, and then it moved to its current location. So this is a business that's been in Mount Pleasant since, I believe, the 20s. And so they have a long-standing, it was very difficult for them to part because of the long-standing relationship. But the door is left open from the standpoint that they have a active real estate acquisition department, and to be competitive in this market, they would need to be a Meijer or they would need to be a Walmart, which is what their marketplace concept is. So just as what I heard is that although they're leaving now, it doesn't mean that they won't be back later. And you brought up a wonderful thought, and they had an option on that corner property for quite a few years before during the recession, is that, you know, there's viable places, and I think that this community could fully support something on the west side of town in our township.
I agree.
And I think that that's a possibility from what she reading behind the lines and saying that's kind of where she left me. So I hope that's the case, because that's where I shop. And
We always do.
you know, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to Rick's.
Well, you know, that's
You know?
why I made the comment as far as it'd be nice to see a grocery store there, because I was aware of the fact that, it was also on Facebook today that that was closing, and it's a shame, because that's where we do our shopping too. So now, basically, if nothing else, the closest then is either Walmart, and you go to Rick's, and Rick's is a great option, so.
You know, Rick's is local, and we want to keep them around, because we certainly don't want to lose them too, right? Because I don't want to stand in line behind somebody buying tires and a battery when I want to buy groceries. So, with
All
that
right.
in mind,
Phil, so you call it.
Really
You
quick,
got-
don't forget to stop by
What's
Ducey's.
the stream saying now?
Well, they're saying, Phil, you forgot a 5-page report you were going to provide, and I guess I'll start now. I'll move we adjourn.
okay.
I'll double that.
Support.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Don't forget to go.